Welcome to Rubber Bands, an Avenues Recovery podcast. Conversations about the push and pull of addiction and recovery. And now, here's your host, Shlomo Hoffman.
Hey again, everybody. This is Shlomo Hoffman with Rubber Bands Podcast, conversations about the push and pull of addiction, where we explore various initiatives and real-life stories about people struggling with addiction, people battling addiction, and people finding ways to fight addiction. Recently, Avenues Recovery Centers has began an initiative of outreach to local colleges in areas where we service to hear what they're struggling with, to hear how we can help, how we can collaborate. A lot of colleges are doing a lot of amazing things in terms of getting kids to understand the dangers of the opioid epidemic and other substances, and giving education to faculty about how to properly guide and help students navigate through these younger years where they're struggling with various different new experiences and the like. Today, we bring in Jacob Goldberg from Tulane University, the Recovery Community Manager at Tulane University, who will share with us his story, his own personal story of recovery, how he got to, being in the mental addiction field, and the realities of the experience of the college student today in the United States with regards to addiction. Jacob, how have you been?
I'm well, Shlomo. Thank you for having me here, man. It's an honor to be a guest on the podcast. I am a follower, so hopeful that your audience will appreciate some of the content that I'm sharing today. So again, real grateful to be here. I can introduce myself a little more, and I appreciate that introduction. So again, my name is Jacob Goldberg. I'm down in New Orleans, Louisiana, and I work for Tulane University as their recovery community manager. And it's a relatively new initiative on campus, but my focus, I have a various different roles. My focus really is to help support students in recovery, to do some advocacy work, to do some educational work, and so that students can have a very supportive college experience and still be able to practice their recovery skills. So like I said, happy to be here. I can dive in a little bit of some of my background and what got me here, if that's where we want to start.
Yeah, so let's start there. It's always a good place to start. It's from the beginning, right?
Yeah, I can get all tangential and be all over the place. So I'll try to give you the cliff notes of who
I'll try to keep you coloring within the lines. You don't worry about that.
I appreciate it, man.
So you're born and bred. Are you born and bred in New Orleans? Are you a Louisiana native?
So I am from Baton Rouge, Louisiana, which is approximately 63 miles west of New Orleans, a little up the Mississippi River, and it's a vastly different environment than New Orleans. As you and your listeners know, New Orleans is just a very diverse and melting pot of personalities, of energies, and a confluence of a lot of different ethnicities based on its historical background. And so, New Orleans is unique, right? And I think that's we'll get into it maybe a little bit later. Absolutely. But there's this uniqueness that folks often describes themselves in the recovery space, or if they get into if they're struggling with a substance, is often feel that it's very, very unique. So it's kind of apropos that I'm in this very unique, diverse city dealing with a diverse issue, so to speak.
So would you consider the addiction battle, so to speak, unique in New Orleans more than in various other places?
Well, I think it's, this is still, you guys know this because you're in the industry. It's still a very novel concept, right? It's still novel in the scientific world that we're acknowledging addiction as a disease. We're trying to formulate what is the best practice to combat this disease. We don't have a cure for it yet, but we're getting closer to it, and we know we have better means of treating it and managing the disease. And I could say that in cities like New Orleans and probably cities that have a really diverse spectrum of folks and have us on the cutting edge of what's going on in technology and science, they may be more up to speed on what's happening. But there's still, like you guys are doing this podcast, there's still a lot of stigma. There's still tons of assumptions about what substance use is and addiction and the treatment for it. And again, I can go off on this, but there's a lot of folks that feel like this is their way is the only way, and it's maybe not founded in some in best practices or what the science is telling us today.
Fair enough. So let's talk about you then. Let's talk about your experience.
Yeah, let's get it to me. So I was born and raised in Baton Rouge. I have been in New Orleans for about 6 years now. And what got me here is part of my journey in my own personal recovery. So I identify as a person in recovery. How
many years are you?
Yes, I'm a little over 13 years
Wow.
in recovery. So I went to treatment I went to treatment twice. I went to treatment when I was 18. I also went to treatment when I was 21.
So you were struggling with addiction during your high school years.
Well,
is that correct?
I wouldn't tell you I was struggling with addiction. Those weren't the words that I would use, and but maybe some other people would. I was getting into some trouble because of some of the lifestyle choices I was making around alcohol and other substances. My trajectory was not in the greatest place. And because of some of my choices, I started having some consequences, like most people do, right?
That's correct.
And so based on some of those consequences, there were some legal ramifications behind those consequences. And it was kind of like an option. It was like, Jacob, hey, you can go do this treatment. You can get some help because we feel like you have a problem with substances, or your relationship with substances is impeding your progress. Or you could go to prison, or you can go to jail. So
that was at 18. That was step one at 18.
Yeah. That was at 18. So I mean, I could give you all kinds of stories that lead up to that, but I mean, that is the crux of it, right? I come from a good family, strong values. I had good educational background. I didn't have any kind of major significant traumas happen to me. My parents did divorce, but they were still supportive of us, of me and my brother, in our formative years and relationships. I played sports. I had tons of friends. Seemingly normal of childhood with no major ruptures. I fell into a lifestyle of using substance, just like a lot of young kids do, just from exposure and just from, it was something to be cool. It's something to you go against the grain, right? I've always been someone that has difficulty with boundaries and rules. You tell me I'm going to have that I can't do this, I'm going to show you that I can do it, right? And so
you're a superhero.
Yeah, exactly.
Superhero mentality.
As a child,
right.
I have my prefrontal cortex is not developed enough to understand the consequences, and my insight and judgment is really impaired. And then you start putting substances in there that change some of the brain chemistry as well. It's you can't tell me anything. So even at that age of 18, when the powers that be told me that I needed to do something different and I had a problem, I was resistant to that idea.
So what happened? So you go to treatment at 18?
Yeah, so I go to treatment at 18.
And then what?
I get out of some trouble, and probably about 6 months later, I go back to doing some of the same behaviors. Right?
Okay. Are you in college now? Are you finished high school? Have you graduated?
Yeah. So I graduated when I was 17, and I entered the State University at 18.
That's LSU.
At LSU, that's right.
So you bleed Tigers.
Yeah, go Tigers, man. So I had no idea what I wanted to do. I know I like the freedoms of doing what I want whenever I wanted, without being under the auspice of my family's rules.
Without people telling you what to do.
Yeah,
you like figuring it out.
Yeah. So what happened is I failed out of college, and that was due to my relationship with substances. Is that I prioritized that before my academic endeavors. And so went to treatment, got out of trouble for a little while, decided to go back to the same behaviors that I was doing. To your listeners that deal with legal issues or know about legal issues, easy to get in the system, hard to get out, right? So even though my family is well resourced, and we had different means in which to thankfully kind of mitigate some of that. is that I kept messing up. I was failing drug tests, Shlomo. I was like, even all I had to do was pass some drug tests and all these legal stuff would go away. Failed the drug test. I got one last shot when I was 21, and the judge said, "Hey, you're gonna have to have some consequences for this stuff because you're not changing your behavior." And at that point, that's when I entered a long-term residential male treatment facility that was for younger guys.
So there's elements here of youth. There's elements here of not being fully developed to understand, consequences.
Yeah,
Element of being smarter than the system. Like you got this elements of denial, all kinds of things
sure.
that we talk about all the time in the field. It seems like you.
Oh, I lived it. And I still have a little bit of that denial and resistance. I'm better at managing it a little bit now. So, so fast forward again back to 21,
right?
And what changed? What was different for me? Not much, other than the experience of, first of all, I was in a longer term program. This program was like a 6-month program, step down program. So for me personally, I needed that, and I'm an advocate of long-term treatment. I know you guys at Avenues
very much
support long-term treatment. The environment that I was in the treatment facility was profoundly the reason that I like stuck around and maybe started to listen and hear some of the message that the facilities like yourself disseminate to their patients, is that, maybe you don't know everything about what's going on with you. Maybe there is another way to kind of approach this situation. I wanted to get out of trouble, and then maybe there's a lifestyle that you can embody that will give you some different results. And so it was through that time and meeting some other some peers, I would say, some folks that were in my age range, kind of similar to my background, educated from similar family structures, and maybe even some more affluent folks.
Let me just jump in here for a second. Was there a moment for you? Was there a person for you?
No,
was there a moment, or it was just an evolution?
I didn't have any kind of aha moment,
No
or wasn't
epiphanies.
any kind of, I wish I could tell you like a beautiful story of where I was sitting on the banks of the Mississippi and I saw the ship come by.
Sometimes the most beautiful story is just the hard work that just builds up every day. The water on the rock.
Time and consistency. And so the insight, which I'm about to get to talk about, is like, when did that insight come in and say, hey, this is a reality, and the way that you're living and acting right now is a beautiful thing, and it's the sole reason why you're having all these positive things happen in your life. So, I look forward to the day. I was still on probation when I was 21. I was like, well, I'm going to do this recovery thing. I'm going to, go through the motions. I was going to AA meetings at the time. I had a sponsor. I was doing all the things that the treatment center asked me to do. And I thought, well, I will get through this, and because this is helping me. I acknowledge that, like, I'm not failing drug tests anymore. I'm not getting in trouble. I'm not getting arrested anymore. I'm going to continue to do this. But when I get done with all of this legal stuff, I'm gonna, I think I can kind of handle a little bit. I can drink a little bit. I might be able to do some other things. But what ended up happening is, as that time went by and I continued to do the steps of recovery and like the actionable pieces that we ask people to do when it comes to actually like have some change, my life started getting better. My relationships with my family and my friends, I had more of a direction and an idea of what I wanted to do and where I wanted to go in terms of like my career. I was just overall healthier, and I think I had that insight because I can remember finishing this probation and being like, well, it's just another day. It's great that I'm done with this, but I'm going to. At that point, I was already on my path towards working in the addiction treatment world, and that's another big piece that's kept me connected. If I'm completely honest about it.
That's a very interesting. A lot of times we talk about in the industry. If you look around the industry is so staffed. All the facilities, you go through all the facilities. So many people have their own stories of recovery,
right?
And a lot of times people will talk about it in the sense of they want to give back. Like they feel like this is what set them on their path. and
Absolutely.
it's very meaningful to give back. But there's another element here, which I think you're alluding to here now, is as well, is that it keeps you connected. In
Keeps you
terms of your
connected.
own, of your own health and your own
Yeah.
in your own recovery.
But yeah, like, so like what honestly happened when I was 20, 21, the treatment center called me and was like, "Hey, do you want to come volunteer or come work at the facility as like a behavioral health tech?" And I was like, "Sure, I'll do that." I did that. I enjoyed, like you said, I really enjoyed the ability of being able to give back, because I felt like this place or this concept had been so helpful to me. So like I wanted to be able to share that with other people. And that's really what got my foot in the door.
There's also a realization that this really works. Like, this worked for me. I'm doing something that really works.
There was I was walking results of like, hey,
Right.
listen, I'm not in jail anymore. I'm going to school. I have I can look people in the eye and have a clear conversation with folks. That sort of thing. I'm more confident in my own being, and just and being in front of people. So, that led to at 22 getting my first addiction credential, which is in Louisiana, was a CIT, a counselor in training. And I had, wonderful mentors and opportunities, as I look back on it now, that like were very, very invaluable. I got to sit in with like one of my mentors holds the same credentials that I have right now. And I didn't say that in the beginning of our podcast. I didn't want to,
Right.
I think, I'm this professional, but I hold 3 different licenses. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I'm a licensed addictions counselor. I'm a certified clinical supervisor.
Say it loud and say it proud, Jacob.
There we go.
You don't gotta be ashamed of that.
I'm more than that. I'm more than that stuff too. I also hold my
just show us the list. I see a ton.
I have my Coast Guard license captain. I'm a licensed captain as well, because I have this obsession of fishing. So
cool.
Shlomo, you get down here to New Orleans, Louisiana. We'll take you out on the boat. We'll show you a good time fishing.
What's your biggest catch?
Biggest catch, I caught a 165-pound yellowfin tuna out of Venice.
Wow.
A couple years ago in October. They're catching big fish right now. We got a trip scheduled in a couple weeks. Hopefully they're still there. It'd be nice to catch a 200-pound yellowfin tuna.
Did you eat it, or you threw it back in?
Absolutely.
You ate it.
Absolutely. We eat the tuna.
Wow.
Fresh tuna.
I love fishing too.
Love that? So, that's another subject, but
that's a good subject, though.
It's a great subject.
We'll do it on our fishing podcast.
Yeah, I got introduced to that through like recovery. So like recovery opened up all these different passions. I tell people all the time when they're getting into this, you got to get passionate about something that, I put so much energy into my ability to continue, doing nefarious things and getting away with stuff and lying and cheating, or, just, using substances or alcohol. I put energy into that. And you got to be able to put some energy into, some people get really obsessive about their personal recovery and going to meetings and really immersing themselves in a 12-step culture or another pathway to recovery. But I think it's also important to and you see a lot of people get obsessive about their diet and their physical being. Some get religious. Some start picking up some different hobbies. For me, fishing was great. I could plan the trip. I was waking up super early on a Saturday morning. So
it's about self-development. It's about self-development.
We got to find out who we are, right? So
exactly.
that I'd been exposed to that earlier in life, but the same mentor that I had, that I got that has the credentials that I have now, that I got to really sit with and be with in psychotherapy group. He also was a big fisherman, and he as I'm talking about it now, it really like crystallized that this guy had a lot of influence on me. And and he did it in a very like passive kind of way. It was very invitational in terms of like, hey, this is the way my life is, and it seemed pretty happy, and had a lot of cool stuff going on. And there's a lot of I never thought I wanted to be like a therapist growing up, and going to school, I was somewhat of the minority in classes as a heterosexual white male in the counseling demographics in school. At least like where we are now is it was mostly female identities in that space, so like this was very, very different, when
Interesting.
I talk to a lot of manly men about what I do, or we talk about like therapy, most of the time they say, what do you mean, physical therapy? You're a physical therapist? I'm like, yeah, physical therapy, right?
Yeah.
So like this it's still a new construct in our culture here to start to acknowledge that talk therapy, going to treatment, asking for help, that's a wonderful thing, and everybody's fallible. Everybody needs to, if you can and admit some mistakes and do something different behind it, wow, what a gift that you're giving to yourself and to your family members, and anybody else that's around you. So
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing all of that background. Gives a little bit, idea of where all this passion's coming from. So I appreciate that.
yeah,
Let's talk about college, because recently we've been exploring this a lot at Avenues Recovery, about this space. First of all, there are aspects of prevention. There are aspects of people going into a new experience and
sure.
being kind of overwhelmed, and also having the liberty. They're not at mom's house.
Yep.
There's no curfew. Nobody's looking after them. They have that aspect. And there's fear, there's pressure, there's keeping up academically. There's so many different things that are going on that are being thrown at a kid who's leaving home for the first time.
Absolutely.
There's also an interesting component. I feel, we've done some research on our end in terms of colleges and students, and what they're experimenting with, what they're busy with, what they're doing in terms of substance abuse.
Right.
A lot of times the culture of college, is closely perceived as as a drinking culture, a hookup culture, a lot of that
Yep.
party atmosphere, a lot of like that stuff that's going on. And that's obviously stuff that has to be addressed. And there's a huge element of alcohol on college campuses, and how to do that responsibly, is obviously a big part of education in terms of addiction. There's also other stuff. There's also, and I feel like this is a very interesting component. There's an academic pull. There's like Adderall, like those kinds of drugs that help kids stay focused. So kids that are not even looking to party, quite the contrary, they're looking to succeed. They need to keep
Correct.
up with their grades. They need to make it. They
Correct.
need to be at the top of the class. They're driven. They're
moving-
ambitious.
We're moving so fast, right? And it's all about, there's all kinds of productivity happening, and we have some really bright minds. And anybody that takes an amphetamine, doesn't matter if you're diagnosed with ADHD or ADD, anybody's going to perform better initially with
Right.
an amphetamine.
I mean, we're talking about Adderall. Statistically, we're talking about Adderall being prescribed over 70% more than from 10 years ago. I mean, this is on the books.
It's big.
I mean,
It's big stuff,
yeah.
man. Where's that coming from? I don't know. Is that big pharma? Is that
Right.
Is it just like we as a society and a culture have accepted that you could take this and perform better?
I think this is like a really curious piece. Like if you get in front of
Yeah.
a kid, a lot of times, drug consumption is related to kids that are quote unquote bad kids, or, kids that are looking. And here we're talking about kids that are really driven. They're really ambitious. Like this is the way I'm keeping up. I need this. I need to do this.
Right.
I'm performing better. And to get in front of a kid and tell him you're going to be okay, you're going to be
Right.
successful, give you alternative measures, to keep up, and not to avail yourself of these kinds of drugs, which you're going to eventually get addicted to, and eventually will just drag you down a terrible, terrible rabbit hole. So when you're
Right.
sitting in front of a kid, Jacob, and and he's getting involved in Adderall, or you see, there's that type of element. Like, what are you telling him? He's like desperate. I need to stay afloat here. I'm drowning in terms of academic achievement.
Yeah, it's a tough one right there, Shlomo. It really is, because you don't want to, just say no, don't do that. Does that work? When you say no, you can't do that. That's people are smart, people are intuitive, people understand, and people, make choices that they believe really that they need, right? So again, a lot of times the argument is like, I have this diagnosis, my physician prescribes it to me, I need it to be able to perform. When I don't take it, I can't perform. And particularly once you get, once you have a certain level of amphetamine in your body, the brain is definitely there's a bounce back experience. And so like, yes, if you did stop taking it, it'd be pretty difficult to be able to process. So
I just want to jump in here and make one disclaimer that obviously, there is sometimes medical needs for somebody to take those drugs.
Absolutely.
And just obviously, we're not advocating that like take this off the shelves.
Right. No. Like where does it come to where it becomes like this is going to be harmful for myself, right?
Right. A college kid needs treatment. He's addicted, he's dependent. He needs to go to treatment.
Right.
How do we get him into treatment, and how do we assuage his fears and his family's fears of the losses that they're going to take? Are they going to take losses? Are they not going to take losses? Right. How do we tell a kid, look, you need treatment. You're not going to lose anything. You're not going to lose your place. What's a university's responsibility in responding to a student that needs treatment? How do you feel about that?
Well, I think it's a great question, Shlomo. And I think we are doing much better. I could say here at Tulane, I could say just overall in the college space of acknowledging that and wanting people to get some help and encouraging and doing some intervention there. So oftentimes in the university setting, it starts with consequences, right? That's what happens. They get in trouble. There's some sort of behavioral issue on campus. And then the university may intervene and explore and say, okay, they take a look at the situation, what's going on, and then pull the family in and say, hey, listen, what's your son, daughter, whoever is having some issues, and these are our recommendations. So
what's the most common response from the family?
That varies. I could ask you the same thing, right?
Yes.
Listen,
you're at the first step, you're at the college step before the kid comes to treatment, and the parents like, no, my son needs to graduate.
They're like, well, I don't believe you, right? Or like, that there may be some denial there as well. And so that's where like having some professionals that can objectively make an assessment of the situation and take collateral information and then make a recommendation, I think is really, really important. And so we do that a little bit at Tulane, and we're expanding that in some ways. If this college in some ways identifies that maybe a person is struggling with something, there's something there, we have some mechanisms in place internally to make a clinical assessment of somebody, but we also defer to outside organizations that are experts in this field, like your organization, Shlomo. Like we would say, hey, we want you to go get an assessment done and follow the recommendations.
So what's the response to a student or a family that says, okay, is what's going to be? He's going to go to treatment. Is he losing his place in school? Is there going to be a punitive response? Now, basically, I'm coming clean as an addict.
Yeah, that's basic. That's different at each university, right? And I think we're talking about culture of the university, maybe change their administration, maybe a little bit different. I am, again, I feel very thankful and privileged to work for a university like Tulane that honors recovery and that honors the understanding of a substance use disorder, and that it is an illness and that it needs to be treated, and to not hold people and have punitive action for folks that are willing to do something about it, right? So sometimes we need some punitive action, otherwise we're never going to make any changes. But to be strictly just, hey, you violated our code of conduct, we're going to kick you out, boom. That's not the stance of the university.
So creating a atmosphere where it's safe for the student to come to you and say, I need help, but I don't want to lose my reputation. I don't want to lose my place in school. I want to be something. Making it. I want to get help.
Yeah,
help us.
Yeah, exactly. And we, I think our administration and the folks that work in those spaces are well versed in some of that languaging. That's important. So educating about the individuals, because you and I can talk about it, and I can speak recovery language and all the words really clearly because I've been in an addiction treatment industry for over 10 years. But there's a lot of folks that addiction impacts everybody, and especially in a university system, we're dealing with students. We need to have some knowledge base of it,
Right.
And understand like what we don't know and defer to the folks that do know what's going on.
And this is where I think there's such a big place for collaboration between experts in the recovery field,
Right.
like Avenues Recovery Center, like an organization like ours, that we know the back end of addiction, we know how to treat addiction, and then we talk and with people that have tremendous expertise in students and how they work, like people like yourself that are working in the colleges. And I think that if we could come together, if we could find a way, to come together to make collaborations, this is your area of expertise, this is our area of expertise, and we have this shared goal of making kids have the best possible outcomes and the best, and a real shot at sustained recovery.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're starting to see it. There's other universities that have some of these partnerships with treatment facilities, and some universities that are actually beginning to do some of because some universities have the capacity to do at least some level of treatment in-house, because there are clinicians and people who have expertise in the addiction field on campus, that maybe that's a lower level intervention. Obviously, the goal of the university is to help these students thrive and graduate and matriculate through the system. And if you really pull the numbers across the nation about people who are taking medical withdrawals or who are failing out, and what is the rationale behind that, and oftentimes it's due to mental health or substance use issues. And so there's been this shift of like, okay, the university sees that, right? That essentially we are a business in some ways, and we want to keep people here and do well, and that's a mutual beneficial process. So can we help intervene with these folks, get them to, whether we do something in-house with them, or we say, hey, we're going to help you with your academic prowess, and we're going to help you do a withdrawal. We're going to help you do sort everything out here, let you get some help that you need, whatever that help is, whether it be go into treatment, whether it be a long-term or IOP or residential program. We're going to get you into that space, and then we're going to get you back to us, and also give you the support, because that's the big, and that's where I come in too. I do a lot of different things along the addiction recovery spectrum on campus. But when you come back to campus and you are a person in recovery, or, we have some supports already on campus for you. So you don't have to create that all by yourself, because that's still a novel concept. We're talking about collegiate recovery has been around since like the late 1970s. It's been the last like 5 to 8 years that it's really blown up. And there's more. And more universities are starting.
Everyone's bringing their resources to bear.
Right. There's a national organization called ARHE, the Associates in Recovery and Higher Education. It's only about 10 years old. It's still very formative in its process, but they're doing a decent job at being able to be collaborative in this space.
And there's still room for for creativity and for resourceful minds to continue to make it develop and grow.
Sure. And so I get excited talking about it because there's so many.
We can see.
We're talking.
You're jumping in your seat.
Yeah, I know we're probably, I told you I'd take you off your time meter, but we're talking about treatment right now and getting folks into treatment. But there's this, like, what about the academic prowess around addiction medicine and treatment? What about the folks, like the people studying it in these universities, and the science behind it to help contribute to the help and the work that facilities like yourself are doing? The
trickle down effect.
We're a research institution here at Tulane, and we in the past year we just started our first, and we are a medical school as well, and we started an addiction medicine fellowship so that you can have a rotation as a psychiatrist. It's called addiction medicine, and that's crazy. That's new stuff, right? To use those words in the science community.
If you kind of get all the pieces, if you get all the pieces rotating and working together, we can make a real difference.
Absolutely.
Jacob, let me ask you this. What would your elevator speech, your 2-minute response if somebody would ask you, how can I help? I'm just a regular guy. I already have a regular job. I sit in an office. I know some kids. Specifically, we're talking about college-age kids. What can I do to be an inspiration? What can I do to be a support? There's drug addiction all over, all around us. What would you tell a guy in the street? I want to help.
Sure. I think the biggest thing, and it's why I'm excited about talking about this right now, is having the conversation, talking about it, bringing it up in dialogue with folks that may not understand, or we can have this conversation because we're in the industry together, but to be able to start talking about it, that's how we really stop the stigmatization around it.
Jacob Goldberg from Tulane University. I want to thank you, first of all, for your passion, because I'm fired up. I'm fired up about treating addiction when I talk to you. You've been amazing. Thank you for your graciousness, for your help. Everybody, this was Jacob Goldberg at Tulane University, Recovery Community Manager.
Yeah, let me do a little plug real quick, Shlomo, before you end it too. So if anybody wants to get in touch with me, it's pretty easy. You can Google my name and Tulane. My contact number comes up. My direct number. Email me, text me. All your followers, if you have any ideas, we're excited. And Shlomo, you've inspired me. I think we're going to be starting a podcast as well.
Oh, nice!
Recovery.
I'm waiting for an invite.
Yeah, I'll need some direction, because like you said, I'm all over the place. I need to step back and just be able to engage. And appreciate you inviting me to be here. Again, collegiate recovery and recovery at Tulane, and recovery in general. Happy to help assist any way I can. It's my passion, obviously, and where I will be.
There you have it, Jacob Goldberg from Tulane University. Thanks everybody for listening. Rank, rate, and subscribe. Rubber Bands, conversations about the push and pull of addiction. Listen to our podcast, listen for future episodes, and any feedback would be greatly welcome. Thank you again, Jacob. And this has been another episode of Rubber Bands.